A year ago, I said this. This is a really solid upgrade to the iPad Pro. If you have the 2020 iPad or even the 2018 iPad and you're not doing really processor-intensive tasks, you're probably not going to see a huge improvement here. And I still think that holds true today. The new 2022 iPad Pro is a nice incremental upgrade. They've swapped out the M1 processor for the new M2, and they've added some extra features like a pencil hover state and also ProRes video recording for the back cameras. Hello, I am Brad. And I'm Brad from the past. And we review tech for creative professionals. That was terrible. Should we do it again? No. To test this thing out, I'm gonna need a good art project. So I asked all of you, does anyone have any good skull photos? Do you ever regret tweeting something? All the time. So here's a skull image I got from Third Person over on Twitter. I have one I've taken a few years ago in a cemetery in Pamuch. I like it. I'm going to desaturate it. I'm going to take out some of the colors and also boost up the contrast and use this as my reference. I'm going to be following a lot of the principles that I laid down in the early lessons of my Intro to Digital Art class. Are you really promoting your new course? Yeah. If you're just getting started in digital art, check out my other YouTube channel, Brad's Art School. If you want to jump into the deep end, go to bradsartschool.com and learn more about my new course. If you've ever followed an online tutorial and thought, this just isn't turning out right, it's not you. The tutorial was probably too advanced. Each project in my course is designed to give you a quick win and build on some fundamental art skills that you can use to go back to those tougher courses and tutorials and kick some butt. So what grade would I give Hover here? I for incomplete. The only app I have that currently has Hover working in it is the Apple Notes app. But as of the time of this recording, no other app has implemented it yet. You can kind of test it out by rolling around the iPad OS's interface, and that's kind of cool, but it's not what makes this feature interesting. There are several apps that are currently working on adding support. For example, Apple's demo video showed some really cool things happening in Procreate. Procreate, now that is a word that means something totally different to non-artists. Yeah, I forget that every time I go to a party. Procreate isn't just adding hover, but the ability to change your brush strokes on the fly by pinching in and out on the canvas while hovering. I love this idea, so you can see in real time how wide your stroke's going to be in the exact place where you're going to be laying paint down. Adobe Fresco is another app that's working on implementing hover, and I'm sure there are a ton of other developers all over the place feverishly working to get it up and running in their apps too. Now, most of my artwork is cartoony line work, so a hover state isn't that important to me for most of the things that I create. That's because I'm using the pressure sensitivity of the pencil to control the width of my line. I'm not resizing my brush a ton. So some artists are really dependent on features like hover, while others are not. And while to the average consumer, this might seem like a really boring addition, to a lot of artists and illustrators, it's a very big deal. In fact, when I was planning out this review, I purposely chose this lineless style for the drawing that I am doing, precisely because it requires me to change my brush size a lot. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I changed my brush size, I tested out on the canvas, too big, change it again. The ability to see your brush size ahead of time, or even to change it on the fly like what we're seeing Procreate doing, takes a lot of guesswork out of things and is a big time saver. Hover is an M2 iPad Pro feature only. It looks like a software thing, but it really does rely on sensors in the chip to detect the pencil input and make sure all of this works together. So this is not something that is going to be rolling out to older iPads in the future. This is M2 and beyond. A lot of folks ask me, how does Hover work in Sidecar? Does it turn it into a more Cintiq-like device? And they haven't implemented anything in Sidecar yet. So that performs pretty much the same way it always has. I've never been a huge fan of it, at least for drawing. It's a fine second screen, but everybody that I know who's used it as a drawing tablet tends to bounce off it pretty quickly and go back to native apps. I got this Gong app. It's this way that we can separate each section of the video. The thing is, with the iPad Pro, this is going to run any illustration or design app you throw at it, and it's going to run it crazy well. But I can say the same thing about the iPad Air. I can even say that about the entry-level iPad. And in that way, this iPad is really kind of overkill. Apple is trying to change that. One of the tiny announcements they made at WWDC could have big ripples in the future. They're opening up more room on the M1 and M2 iPads to developers to bring more pro-level apps to the platform. They're letting them use some of the storage on the iPad itself, like virtual RAM, the same way it would be used on a PC. That's going to make multitasking and some of these heavier duty apps much, much better. better. Of course, it's going to take some time for developers to really take advantage of that, but it is an exciting change. We've already seen that some really heavy-duty pro-level apps are coming down the road. DaVinci Resolve has been showing off their editing software, and the idea of using a video editing app of that caliber on an iPad is mouth-watering. You've been able to video edit on iPads for years, but it's not like a great experience. But if it does become a real thing, then an iPad Pro that lets you go up to 2 terabytes of storage becomes way more appealing. Not just for illustrators, but other creative pros too. Apple's fancy mini LED display makes a return here, at least on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. They're still using the really high-quality LCD screens on the 11-inch this year. And even though that hasn't changed, I do want to touch on it a little bit because last year there was a mini controversy where some people were pointing out that there was light bleed on the screen. I've tried to see it. I guess you have to go into a really dark room and crank up the brightness really high. Maybe I just have old man eyes. I couldn't see it. I don't use a really bright screen in a really dark room, but for many of you in the comments last year who were asking specifically about that, I wouldn't worry about it. And the other pro level feature is external monitor support. Where did he go? I'm coming! This is why I work alone. External monitors will be supported on M1 iPads and above, and it's coming sometime in the future as Apple is still working out the kinks. Now, that external monitor feature is built on top of a new iPad OS feature called Stage Manager. It's a new way to do multitasking on the iPad, and it's starting to grow on me. You have to turn it on in the mini settings you pull down in the upper right-hand corner. Yeah, that's not called mini settings. Okay, then what's it called? I don't know. With that toggle on, your apps go from full screen to windowed mode, and you can drag in recently opened apps from the side. So finally, I can use Instagram as a reference window. I didn't find myself using this feature all that much because I don't really move between apps very often. I might pull open Spotify or check Twitter in the middle of a drawing session, but those can be swiped in from the side already. I'm not doing any true multitasking. I find when I'm on the iPad, I am hyper-focused in one app, which isn't really that surprising when you stop and think about it, because that's exactly the way iPad apps have been designed and conceived up until now. Some people might drag things from Notes to Mail or back and forth from their Photos app. I just stick to Affinity Designer and Procreate and save everything to files. I see Stage Manager as yet another step to the future of the iPad. It's not super useful to me now, but I can see it being built on in the future, and as more pro apps come to the platform in a few years, it could be a really big deal. This iPad is great, and I don't know if there's enough here to warrant an upgrade if you already have an iPad Pro. But if you do grab this one, it is going to future-proof you for quite a long time. I'm still rocking my 2018 iPad Pro as my daily driver. It works great. I am thinking this might be the year I bite the bullet and upgrade. Maybe not, I don't know. It can run Center Stage. I'll definitely be trying out DaVinci Resolve when it comes out. That might be the deal breaker for me. Also, you have Affinity working on Affinity Publisher for the iPad. Lots of great stuff coming our way. And so those are my thoughts. So, Future Brad, do you have any investment tips? Don't buy any NFTs. And if what? Check out my 10th generation iPad video here. I have thoughts. Also, my art tutorial channel is linked up here too. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.